Dr. Rennie Cole stared at the failed prototype with 4 of her 6 eyes, while the other 2 scanned the daily reports. Another breakdown. Another safety protocol violation that halted progress before it began. Another day in the Galactic Innovation Council that produced nothing innovative. The Valian scientist's thin fingers tapped against the smooth surface of her workspace. Around her, researchers from a dozen different species moved through the laboratory like dancers performing ancient steps. Everyone knew their role. Everyone followed procedure. Everyone created exactly what they were supposed to create, which was nothing new at all. 300 years. That was how long it had been since the last major breakthrough in galactic technology. The quantum stabilizer that made long-distance communication possible had revolutionized civilization, and then everything stopped. Improvement became the goal. Safety became the priority. Innovation became a word people used while doing the exact opposite. Rennie's colleague Pym shuffled past carrying a data tablet. The Quiloth's fur rippled in shades of contentment. "Another successful day of maintaining our standards," Pym said in his species' musical language. Standards. The word made Rennie's skin change to a dull gray color that reflected her mood. Standards meant doing what had been done before. Standards meant never risking failure. Standards meant a galaxy full of species that had forgotten how to solve problems because they had eliminated all the problems worth solving. The research station orbited a peaceful moon in neutral space. Harmony Station held laboratories, living quarters, and diplomatic facilities where member species of the galactic community worked together. Worked was perhaps too strong a word. They coexisted. They documented. They maintained. Rennie pulled up the statistics she had compiled over the past year. 17,000 research proposals submitted. 16,900 rejected for safety concerns. Of the 100 approved, 93 produced results identical to existing technology. 7 produced marginal improvements that required decades of testing before implementation. Her homeworld of Valia had given her species everything they needed: stable weather, abundant resources, gentle predators that could be avoided rather than fought. Her people evolved in paradise, as had most spacefaring species. The Quiloth came from garden worlds where food grew year-round. The Drenthite developed on planets with minimal geological activity. The Krell evolved on worlds where the biggest danger was falling from a tree. Comfort bred intelligence. Intelligence bred civilization. Civilization bred space travel. Then space travel bred more comfort, better safety, stronger protocols. The cycle fed itself until the entire galaxy ran on systems designed to prevent anything unexpected from happening. The door chimed. Rennie's supervisor entered, her ceremonial sash indicating important news. "The Council has made a decision regarding the newcomers," she said. Newcomers, the humans. Rennie had read the preliminary reports with growing confusion. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, the highest danger rating in the galactic database. Extreme temperature variations, unstable geology, aggressive megafauna, deadly microorganisms, catastrophic weather patterns. The fact that intelligent life had evolved there at all seemed impossible. "They will send a liaison team to assess integration potential," her supervisor continued. "You will evaluate their technological capabilities and determine if they pose a threat." Threat. The word carried weight. Humans had developed faster-than-light travel using methods that made galactic engineers cringe. Their ships used fuel mixtures considered volatile. Their safety margins fell below acceptable minimums. Their entire approach to space travel seemed built on the assumption that things would go wrong and needed to be fixed quickly rather than prevented entirely. "When do they arrive?" Rennie asked. "Their ship is docking now." Rennie moved to the observation window. Station Harmony's docking bay stretched below, a marvel of predictable engineering where every surface met at calculated angles and every system had 3 redundant backups. A human vessel approached using thrusters that flickered irregularly. "Their stabilizers are malfunctioning," Pym observed, first shifting to concerned orange. But Rennie watched more carefully. The flickering followed a pattern. The ship was not malfunctioning. It was pooling thrust to conserve fuel, using minimal power to achieve docking rather than maximum power to ensure smooth approach. It was inefficient by galactic standards but effective by some other measure entirely. The vessel touched down with a slight bounce that made several observers gasp. Galactic docking protocols demanded perfect alignment. The human ship had achieved functional alignment, which was apparently good enough. Three figures emerged wearing environment suits lighter than regulations required. They moved through the station's gravity without the careful steps most species used when adjusting to new environments. One of them actually jogged a few steps to catch up with the others. Rennie felt something she had not experienced in years, curiosity mixed with apprehension. These were not people who followed standard procedures. These were not people who had evolved in comfort. These were survivors from a world that tried to kill them, and they had not just survived but thrived enough to reach the stars. The lead human removed her helmet, revealing dark skin and bright eyes that scanned the docking bay with rapid assessment. She smiled at the welcoming committee, a gesture that showed teeth in what Rennie's cultural database indicated was meant as friendliness rather than threat display. "Dr. Casey Okonkwo," the human said, extending her hand in the greeting gesture their species favored. "Thank you for having us." Rennie touched the offered hand carefully, nodding its warmth and strength. "Dr. Rennie Cole, welcome to Harmony Station. I hope your journey was without incident." Casey's smile widened. "Nothing we couldn't handle. Your docking approach is interesting, though. Very formal. Back home, we just eyeball it and adjust as needed." Eyeball it. The phrase made no sense in proper context, but Rennie understood the meaning. Humans approximated rather than calculated. They adapted rather than prepared. They handled problems instead of preventing them. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when Deathworld thinking met Garden World complacency. Casey moved through the testing chamber with the kind of easy confidence that made Rennie nervous. The human engineer examined each piece of evaluation equipment with quick glances, occasionally touching surfaces as if physical contact revealed information that sensors could not. The creativity assessment had been used for 200 years to evaluate new species joining the galactic community. Simple problems with clear solutions, pattern recognition, logical deduction, basic engineering challenges. Every species scored within predictable ranges. The Quilloth excelled at collaborative tasks. The Valians dominated individual analysis. The Drenthai showed strength in long-term planning. Dan Torres, the human materials scientist, picked up a standard metal alloy sample. He turned it over in his hands, then knocked on it with his knuckles. The sound made him frown. "This is your primary hull material." "Correct," Rennie said. "It has served admirably for 3 centuries." "But it's just one material," Dan said. "No layering, no composite structure. If it fails, the whole thing fails." Pym's fur rippled with confusion. "Why would it fail? We calculate stress tolerances precisely." "Everything fails eventually," Dan said. "On Earth, we learn to plan for failure rather than just prevent it. Multiple layers mean if one cracks, the others hold. Different materials mean different failure points, so they don't all go at once." The concept seemed to disturb the gathered scientists. Planning for failure meant accepting failure as inevitable. Accepting failure as inevitable meant acknowledging that calculations could be wrong, that the universe could be unpredictable, that safety was not absolute. Iris Yamada, the human biotech researcher, stood in front of the medical database terminal. Her fingers flew across the interface faster than Rennie thought possible. "Your treatment protocols are very thorough," Iris said carefully. "Yes, we have documented every illness encountered by member species," Rennie said with pride. Right, but they are all fixed protocols. Patient A with symptoms B receives treatment C. What if the patient responds differently? What if the illness mutates? What if you encounter something new? We would study it extensively before developing treatment, Rennie explained. How long would that take? 5 to 10 years for proper safety validation. Iris looked horrified. People would die waiting for you to be certain. The tour continued through Harmony Station's various facilities. At each stop, the humans pointed out things Rennie had never considered. The power distribution system had no redundancy. The life support relied on a single filtration design. The communication network used centralized hubs instead of mesh connectivity. The food production operated at perfect efficiency with zero margin for increased demand. You've optimized everything for ideal conditions, Casey observed. What happens when conditions stop being ideal? We maintain ideal conditions, Rennie said. Nothing maintains ideal conditions forever, Casey replied. Entropy exists, things break down, systems fail, you have to build flexibility into the design. That evening, Rennie violated protocol by inviting the humans to her private quarters. She needed to understand their perspective away from official oversight. Casey accepted immediately, while her companions exchanged glances that suggested this was typical behavior. Rennie's quarters reflected Valian aesthetics, smooth curves, soft lighting, everything in its designated place. The humans looked around with interest but no judgment. Your world must be very peaceful, Dan said. Valia has had no major geological events in 400 million years, Rennie confirmed. Our climate stabilized long before my species achieved sentience. We evolved without significant environmental pressure. Casey sat down on a cushion designed for different anatomy but adapted without complaint. Earth tried to kill us constantly. Ice ages, supervolcano eruptions, asteroid impacts, plague, famine, predators that could swallow us whole. We survived by being stubborn and creative. How did you develop civilization in such conditions? Rennie asked. Because of such conditions, Iris said. Every problem forced us to think differently. We couldn't just find the optimal solution and repeat it forever because the problems kept changing. We had to learn adaptation as a survival skill. Dan pulled out a small device and projected images into the air. Earth appeared, a blue and white sphere. Our homeworld has 8 climate zones, 5 tectonic plates that shift constantly, weather patterns that can kill you in minutes. We built cities that could withstand earthquakes. We designed ships that could survive hurricanes. We developed medicine that could adapt to evolving diseases. We also developed a lot of sayings about it, Casey added with a smile. Necessity is the mother of invention. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Our entire culture celebrates problem solving because we had to solve problems or die. Rennie felt her skin shifting through colors that reflected complex emotions. The Council fears you will destabilize our civilization. By doing what? Casey asked. By introducing risk, by questioning established methods, by suggesting that our 300 years of stability might also be 300 years of stagnation. The humans exchanged looks. Iris spoke first. We're not trying to break anything. We just see inefficiencies and our instinct is to fix them. On Earth, if something can be improved, you improve it. Waiting for permission or perfect conditions means someone else solves it first. Or the problem kills you before you find the perfect solution, Dan added. Good enough now beats perfect later if perfect later means you're dead. Rennie's communicator chimed. Emergency notification. All senior staff to report immediately. She felt cold certainty settle over her. Something had gone wrong, and the galaxy's perfect systems were about to face their first real test in centuries. The humans were already standing, ready to help before understanding the problem. That was their nature. See crisis, respond immediately, adapt as needed. It was reckless and primitive and exactly what the galaxy had forgotten how to do. "What is it?" Casey asked. "Power fluctuation in the western sector," Rennie said, reading the alert. "Standard protocol requires 6-hour shutdown for full diagnostic." "Or we could just fix it," Casey said. "You cannot. The regulations are clear." Casey smiled. It was not a friendly expression this time. It was the smile of someone who had survived a death world and knew that regulations were suggestions when lives were at stake. "Watch me," she said. The Emergency Operations Center filled with officials who seemed more focused on procedure than the actual emergency. Rennie watched them consult manuals and reference 3-century-old guidelines while the power fluctuation spread to adjacent sectors. 6 hours suddenly seemed optimistic. Casey walked directly to the main engineering console without asking permission. Her fingers moved across the display, pulling up system diagrams faster than the station's own engineers could navigate their interface. Dan stood beside her, already analyzing the data. "There," Casey pointed to a junction node in Sector 7. "Your primary relay is oscillating. It's creating feedback through the entire grid." The chief engineer, a Krell named Vin, studied the same data with methodical care. "Yes, I see the anomaly. We will need to shut down the affected sectors, drain the capacitors, replace the relay assembly, recalibrate the entire network, and run validation tests before restoring power." "Or," Casey said, "we reroute power through the secondary conduits, bypass the faulty relay entirely, and stabilize the system in about 20 minutes." Every engineer in the room turned to stare at her. Vin's scales shifted to a shade that indicated deep concern. "The secondary conduits are not rated for primary load. Safety margins would be exceeded." "By 8%, Dan said, still reading the data. "That's well within material tolerances. You've built in safety buffers on top of safety buffers. The conduits can handle it." "The regulations explicitly forbid exceeding rated capacity," Vin insisted. Casey looked at Rennie. "How many people are in the affected sectors?" "Approximately 4,000 residents and workers," Rennie said quietly. "And they'll be without power for 6 hours. No life support, no heat, no medical equipment." "We have backup systems," Vin said. "They will be uncomfortable but safe." "Unless one of those 4,000 people is in the middle of medical treatment," Iris interjected. "Unless someone is dependent on powered equipment to stay alive. Unless the backup systems also fail because they're running everything at once." Rennie made a decision that would likely end her career. "Do it," she told Casey. The room erupted in protest. Regulations were cited, protocols were referenced, historical precedent was invoked. Rennie ignored all of it and activated her authority as senior research director. "This is now a supervised experiment in alternative engineering approaches. All responsibility falls to me. Proceed." Casey grinned and turned back to the console. Her hands moved with practiced speed, Dan feeding her specifications while Iris monitored life support systems. They spoke in rapid English, using technical terms mixed with casual phrases that made no sense when translated. "Shunting power to grid B7, Casey said. "Watch the voltage spike," Dan warned. "Got it, bleeding excess through the heat sinks." "That's going to make some sections warmer." "Better warm than dark. Iris, how are the medical bays?" "Stable, emergency systems holding." Vin watched with visible distress as Casey violated every safety protocol. She bypassed lockouts designed to prevent exactly what she was doing. She rerouted power through pathways marked for emergency use only. She exceeded design specifications that had been carefully calculated. And it worked. The power fluctuation smoothed, the oscillation dampened, system stability returned to acceptable ranges, lights that had been flickering in affected sectors returned to normal, Medical equipment continued operating. Life support maintained pressure. 18 minutes from start to finish. Casey leaned back from the console and stretched. There you go. Fixed. You'll want to replace that relay when convenient, but the bypass will hold until you do. Silence filled the operations center. Engineers stared at displays showing stable power flow through configurations that should not work according to their training. The systems ran smoothly despite exceeding safety margins. The universe had failed to punish them for breaking the rules. Vin approached the console slowly, examining the routing Casey had implemented. This is highly irregular. This is highly effective, Dan corrected. Your safety margins are overly conservative. They account for worst-case scenarios that almost never happen. By accepting slightly elevated risk, you gain flexibility and speed. But what if the worst-case scenario does occur? Vin asked. Then you adapt, Casey said. You have backups and alternatives ready. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. You build systems that can fail safely rather than systems that cannot fail at all, because the second option doesn't exist in reality. Rennie's communicator buzzed with incoming messages. Some praised the quick resolution. Others demanded immediate investigation into the breach of protocol. The council was already scheduling an emergency session to discuss the incident. More concerning were the messages from younger researchers. Scientists from various species asking technical questions. Engineers wanting to understand the methodology. Medical staff curious about adaptive treatment approaches. A generation that had grown up maintaining existing systems suddenly glimpsing the possibility of creating new ones. That night, Rennie found Casey in one of the station's observation lounges. The human sat alone, looking out at the stars with an expression that seemed almost sad. Homesick, Rennie asked. A little, Casey admitted. Looking at all those stars and thinking about how many species out there have forgotten how to take chances. Your methods are dangerous. Living is dangerous, Casey said. The question is whether you're going to let fear of danger stop you from living better. Your people eliminated risk by eliminating challenge. That works until you face a challenge you can't eliminate. Like today's power failure. Like today's easy problem that became a crisis because nobody knew how to just fix it quickly. Casey turned from the window. On Earth, we have this thing called the OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. You see a problem, you understand what it means, you choose an action, you do it. Your people get stuck in the orient phase. You analyze forever because you're trying to find the perfect decision. Perfect decisions prevent mistakes, Rennie said. Perfect decisions don't exist. Every choice has risks. The skill is not avoiding risk but managing it, understanding which risks are worth taking and which aren't. Casey smiled. You took a risk today. How does it feel? Rennie's skin shifted through several colors before settling on a shade that indicated cautious optimism. Terrifying and exhilarating. That's how you know you're alive, Casey said. That's how you know you're growing. An alert chimed across the station. Priority message from the Drenthe homeworld. Colony ship in distress. Systems failing. 12,000 lives at risk. Estimated time until catastrophic failure, 36 hours. The galaxy's perfect systems faced their first real crisis in generations. And the only people who knew how to handle imperfect situations were 3 humans who had barely been tolerated until now. The Drenthe colony ship Prosperity had been designed for a journey that should have been routine. 20 years of travel to a new world. 12,000 colonists in suspended animation. Automated systems maintaining everything. No variables. No surprises. No problems that a well-designed ship could not handle alone. Except the ship was dying, and nobody knew how to save it. Rennie stood in the emergency council chamber watching officials debate rescue protocols. The Drenthe representatives were desperate. Their people were dying slowly as life support degraded. but desperation could not override centuries of procedure. The standard rescue fleet requires 72 hours to assemble and reach the ship, the Council coordinator announced. We will mobilize immediately. 72 hours, Casey's voice cut through the formal atmosphere. They have 36. Half their people will be dead before you arrive. The coordinator, a Quiloth named Sen, bristled with discomfort. The standard protocols ensure rescuer safety and maximize chances of successful evacuation for survivors. Survivors being the key word, Dan said. You're planning to save whoever is left rather than trying to save everyone. We cannot risk additional lives on uncertain rescue attempts, Sen replied. The regulations are clear. Proper equipment must be assembled. Flight plans must be calculated. Safety margins must be verified. Iris pulled up the Prosperity schematics on her tablet. Their main reactor is failing. Life support is running on backup power. Once that runs out, everyone dies. But the ship itself is salvageable. If we can repair the reactor, we save everyone. Impossible, Vin stated. The Prosperity is 19 light-years from the nearest repair facility. The necessary parts cannot be delivered in time. So we don't deliver parts, Casey said. We improvise with what's available. The room fell silent. Improvise was not a word used in galactic rescue operations. Rescues followed precise protocols with predetermined equipment. You did not make things up as you went along when lives were at stake. Except that was exactly what humans did. That was how they survived on a world that constantly tried to kill them. They used what they had, not what they wished they had. Rennie stepped forward. I propose an alternative mission. A small team travels to the Prosperity immediately. They assess the damage and implement repairs using available resources. The standard rescue fleet continues as planned but serves as backup rather than primary response. This violates every established emergency protocol, Sen said. Your established protocols will result in 6,000 deaths, Casey replied. Our improvised approach might save everyone, which violation is worse. The Drenthai representative spoke for the first time. Her voice carried the weight of species survival. My people are dying. If there is any chance, however small, I authorize the attempt. The vote was close. Conservative members wanted to follow procedure. Progressive members wanted to try something new. In the end, fear of doing nothing outweighed fear of doing something different. The mission team assembled in 4 hours. Casey, Dan, and Iris formed the human core. Rennie volunteered despite having no emergency training. Vin joined reluctantly, convinced his expertise would be needed to prevent disaster. A young Quiloth engineer named Fen practically begged to participate, eager to learn human methods. A Drenthai medic named Tulla joined to care for her people. Their ship was not designed for speed. They pushed it anyway, exceeding safe velocity limits because saving time meant saving lives. The humans showed the alien crew how to monitor systems manually, how to adjust course by feel rather than pure calculation, how to squeeze extra performance from engines designed for conservative operation. 28 hours into the journey, they reached the Prosperity. The colony ship drifted in space, dark and silent except for failing emergency lights. Scans showed reactor temperature dropping, life support at 30% capacity, time remaining 8 hours. Casey studied the data while the others prepared equipment. The reactor core isn't damaged. The cooling system failed. Heat buildup triggered automatic shutdown. If we can restart cooling, the reactor comes back online. The cooling system requires precise calibration, Vin said. Without proper parts, it cannot function. Then we build new parts, Dan said simply. Tulla looked confused. Build them from what? Dan pointed at nearby space. That asteroid belt, basic minerals, iron, carbon, silicon, everything we need for heat-resistant alloys. The plan was insane by galactic standards. Mine asteroids, refine ore in improvised portable smelters, fabricate replacement components using 3D printers designed for simple repairs, not complex manufacturing, install untested parts in a critical system, hope everything worked. The humans made it sound routine. They split into teams. Dan and Finn took a shuttle to harvest asteroid materials. Casey and Vin accessed the Prosperity's reactor chamber. Iris and Tulla began emergency triage on colonists showing signs of hypothermia. Rennie coordinated everything, learning human crisis management in real time. They did not plan every step in advance. They adapted constantly. When the portable smelter overheated, Dan rerouted cooling from the shuttle's life support. When the 3D printer lacked certain materials, Casey redesigned components to use what they had. When colonists needed immediate care, Iris taught Tulla emergency procedures not in any medical database. Problems arose constantly. Solutions appeared just as quickly. The humans seemed to expect obstacles and treated them as puzzles rather than disasters. When something broke, they fixed it with whatever was nearby. When plans failed, they tried different plans. Watched Dan fabricate cooling pipes from asteroid metal with growing amazement. This alloy is not certified for reactor use. Doesn't need certification, Dan said. Needs to work long enough to get everyone to safety. Perfect is the enemy of good enough. 6 hours after arrival, new cooling components were installed. Casey initiated the restart sequence while holding her breath. The humans had done everything right by their standards, but galactic systems were not designed for improvisation. The reactor hummed, temperature stabilized, power flowed through the ship, life support systems engaged fully. In the medical bay, frozen colonists began warming. Heart monitors showed strengthening rhythms. Emergency lights switched to normal illumination. 12,000 lives, saved with jury-rigged parts and creativity. Received a transmission from Harmony Station. The council wanted a full report. The government was calling it a miracle. Young researchers across the galaxy were demanding to know how it was done. Casey leaned against the reactor housing, exhausted but satisfied. "Just another Tuesday for us," she said. The rescue made galactic headlines. Media across 100 worlds showed footage of the improvised repairs. Engineers analyzed the fabricated components with disbelief. Medical professionals studied Iris's adaptive triage protocols. The Prosperity limped to its destination colony with 12,000 grateful survivors who owed their lives to methods that technically violated dozens of regulations. The Innovation Council convened to address the violations formally. Sat in the defendant's position, her career balanced on the outcome. Casey, Dan, and Iris stood with her. They had been ordered to attend but refused to sit, preferring to face judgment on their feet like soldiers rather than scholars. Presented the case against them with methodical precision. Unauthorized mission parameters, exceeded velocity safety limits, performed unregulated manufacturing, installed uncertified components in critical systems, violated quarantine protocols, disregarded emergency procedure guidelines. The list continued for several minutes. "How do you respond to these charges?" asked. Casey spoke first. "We saved 12,000 lives. If that's a crime, charge us." "The issue is not the outcome but the methods," replied. "Your success does not validate the risks you took. Another team attempting similar actions might fail catastrophically." "Another team using your methods would definitely fail," Dan said. "They would arrive too late with proper equipment to save proper corpses following proper burial protocols." The council chamber erupted in argument. Conservative members demanded sanctions. Progressive members praised the results. Representatives begged for leniency. The humans stood unmoved, neither apologizing nor gloating. Finally spoke. "The council must decide what we value more, perfect adherence to procedure or imperfect success at survival. For 300 years we have chosen procedure. It has kept us safe. It has also kept us stagnant. She activated a presentation showing galactic innovation statistics. The graphs were brutal in their honesty. Technological advancement had flatlined. Medical breakthroughs had stopped. Engineering improvements had become marginal refinements. Scientific discovery had become scientific documentation. We are dying slowly, continued. Not from danger but from comfort. We have eliminated the challenges that drive growth. These humans from their terrible world have shown us what we lost: the willingness to try, the courage to fail, the creativity born from necessity. Fen stood, young and bold in a way that shocked the older council members. I request permission to speak. Looked annoyed but nodded. I have learned more in 3 days with the humans than in 3 years of standard training, Fen said. They taught me that problems are not obstacles to avoid but opportunities to grow. They showed me that safety is not the absence of risk, but the wisdom to take the right risks. I request that the Council authorize formal education in human problem-solving methods. Other young researchers stood: a physicist, a chemist, a systems analyst. One by one they voiced support for human integration. They spoke of conversations about Earth history, discussions of trial-and-error learning, concepts like acceptable failure rates and iterative design. A generation was waking up to possibilities their teachers had forgotten existed. The senior members looked alarmed. Change was happening whether they approved or not. Students were questioning established doctrine. Researchers were proposing risky experiments. The comfortable certainty of galactic civilization was cracking. Spoke from the medical section. I watched Iris save lives using protocols that do not exist in our databases. She made decisions in seconds that our procedures require hours to validate. When I asked how she knew what to do, she said, "I learned from people who died when I guessed wrong." That horrified me. Then I realized our perfection came from never trying at all. The debate raged for hours. Finally, the council coordinator called for a vote. Authorize the creation of an adaptive innovation initiative or maintain traditional protocols exclusively. The count was close. Younger members voted overwhelmingly for change. Older members split between fear of chaos and fear of irrelevance. Species whose had been peaceful voted for stability. Species whose colonies faced harsh conditions voted for flexibility. When the results appeared, Even was surprised. The measure passed by 6 votes. The Adaptive Innovation Initiative would be created. Human methods would be studied and adapted. Controlled experimentation with acceptable risk levels would be permitted. Cross-species collaboration on novel approaches would be encouraged. Approached after the session ended. You have fundamentally altered galactic civilization. I hope you understand the responsibility. I understand that standing still is its own form of danger, replied. Casey found in the observation lounge later that evening. The human brought 2 drinks, one formulated for biochemistry and one for human. They sat in comfortable silence watching ships arrive and depart from the station. You know this is going to be messy, Casey said eventually. Change always is. People will resist. Some experiments will fail. There will be setbacks and accidents. I know, said, but the alternative is slow extinction through comfort. We have been so focused on preventing death that we stopped truly living. That's very philosophical for a scientist. I learned it from humans who survived a world that should have killed them. Skin shifted to colors indicating both hope and uncertainty. What happens now? Casey smiled. Now the real work begins. We teach your people what failure taught us. Not to fail deliberately, but to see failure as information rather than catastrophe. To iterate and improve. To try things that might not work because might not is better than definitely won't. Ships continued their eternal dance in the space beyond the window, but something had changed in how saw them. They were not just vessels maintaining the status. They were potential. They were possibility. They were the beginning of something the galaxy had not seen in 300 years. Innovation. Dan joined them carrying data pads. Just got confirmation. 5 universities want to establish exchange programs. Earth will host alien students in engineering, medicine, and emergency response. In return, we send people to learn collaborative methods, systematic analysis, and long-term planning. Learning from each other, Iris said, appearing from the corridor. Combining what we all do best instead of insisting only one way is right. Felt hope for the first time in her long career. The galaxy was waking up. Problems that had been ignored because they were uncomfortable were being examined. Systems that had been maintained because they were familiar were being questioned. They had sparked something ancient and powerful, the drive to grow, the hunger to improve, the courage to risk failure in pursuit of success. The innovation boom was beginning. 2 years transformed the galaxy in ways could not have imagined. Harmony Station had evolved from a museum of old achievements into a laboratory of new possibilities. The corridors buzzed with energy that had been absent for centuries. Arguments replaced agreement. Experiments replaced documentation. Failure became acceptable when followed by improvement. Rennie walked through the expanded research wing with a visiting delegation from the Krell homeworld. They wanted to see what innovation actually looked like when it escaped the prison of perfect planning. A mixed team worked on medical nanobots in one laboratory. The Quiloth researcher explained adaptive programming to her Valian colleague, while Iris supervised their first live test. The nanobots were designed to identify and respond to unknown pathogens rather than just treat cataloged diseases. 3 previous versions had failed. This 4th iteration showed promise. What if it fails again? The Krell delegate asked nervously. Then we learn why and build version 5, Iris said without looking up from her monitoring equipment. That's how progress works. You try, you fail, you improve, you try again. Down the hall, Dan supervised a materials testing facility that would have given safety inspectors heart attacks 2 years ago. Young engineers from 6 species subjected hull plating to extreme conditions, temperatures that exceeded design specifications, pressures that should cause catastrophic failure, impacts that regulations assumed would never occur. Why deliberately stress the materials beyond their limits? Another delegate asked. Dan grinned. Because space doesn't care about your limits. Better to find the breaking point in a lab than during an emergency. See that composite layer? Failed completely at high temperature, so we redesign using different materials. Now we know something we didn't before. The testing chamber erupted in alarms as another sample fractured. The young engineers cheered rather than panicked. Failure meant data. Data meant knowledge. Knowledge meant better designs next time. Casey worked in the central hub, coordinating 17 different projects across the station. Her office looked nothing like traditional galactic workspaces. Organized chaos replaced careful order. Multiple screens showed simultaneous experiments. Reference materials were scattered across every surface. Half-finished prototypes occupied corners. This seems inefficient, a delegate observed. This is what creativity looks like, Casey replied. Clean and organized is great for maintaining existing systems. Messy and experimental is necessary for creating new ones. Both have value. We just spent 300 years only doing the first part. The delegation toured agricultural bays where earth crop rotation techniques had increased yields by 40%. They visited communication centers using human mesh network concepts that eliminated single points of failure. They observed training facilities where students learned to troubleshoot problems without perfect information. Everywhere they went, aliens and humans worked together. Not humans teaching and aliens learning, but genuine collaboration. Valians contributed systematic analysis that kept experiments organized. Quiloth added collaborative approaches that prevented isolated failures. Drenthai provided long-term perspective that balanced human short-term intensity. Humans offered adaptability and creative problem-solving. The synthesis created something better than any single species could achieve alone. That evening, the delegates attended a presentation by Fenn, now a respected researcher in emergency systems design. The young Quilloth who had begged to join the Prosperity Rescue had become a voice for the new generation. "We call it the bridge methodology," Fenn explained, displaying images of Earth bridges. Human structures that connect separated places. They work by distributing stress across multiple supports. If one fails, others maintain integrity. We apply this concept to all systems now. Multiple failure points, multiple recovery paths, multiple solutions to single problems. The presentation continued with examples from across the galaxy. Medical systems that adapted to individual patients rather than treating everyone identically. Power grids that rerouted around damage instead of shutting down completely. Food production that maintained reserves for unexpected demand. Ship designs with redundancy built into every critical system. But this requires accepting that failure will occur, a conservative delegate protested. "You are planning for disaster." "We are planning to survive disaster," Fenn corrected. "Your approach assumed disaster could be prevented. 300 years of success proved you right. Then the prosperity crisis proved you wrong. One unpredicted event and your perfect systems failed completely. Our imperfect systems survive imperfect conditions." Rennie watched the delegates absorb this truth. Some resisted. Change was difficult, especially for species whose entire civilization was built on stability. But others were beginning to understand. The choice was not between safety and danger. The choice was between fragile perfection and robust resilience. Later, Rennie stood in her new office overlooking the station's central plaza. Ships came and went constantly now. Research teams traveling between facilities. Students attending exchange programs. Engineers consulting on projects across dozens of worlds. The galactic community had rediscovered motion. Casey joined her, looking tired but satisfied. "The Drenthai just commissioned 20 new colony ships using our redundancy designs. The Valian Science Institute wants to establish a failure analysis program. The Quilloth Medical Academy is teaching adaptive treatment protocols as core curriculum." "And the conservative factions?" Rennie asked. "Still exist, still resist, still think we're reckless," Casey shrugged. "That's fine. Not everyone has to change. The beauty of the new system is diversity of approach. Some communities can maintain traditional methods, others can experiment, both can coexist and learn from each other." An alert chimed across the station. "Unknown radiation signature detected in unexplored space. Potentially dangerous. Standard protocol would be to mark the area as restricted pending decades of study." The new protocol was different. Rennie activated the communication system. "All teams, we have an interesting problem. Who wants to investigate?" Responses flooded in immediately. Mixed species teams volunteering for potentially risky exploration. Scientists eager to understand new phenomena. Engineers ready to design protection against unknown threats. Medical staff preparing for unexpected exposures. The galaxy had remembered how to be curious. Rennie looked at Casey. "Do you think we will ever run out of problems to solve?" Casey laughed. "God, I hope not. The day we solve every problem is the day we stop growing. And besides, every solution creates new questions. That's the actual secret humans learned on Earth. It's not about reaching the destination. It's about enjoying the journey." Outside the window, a new research vessel departed toward the unknown radiation source. Its hull bore markings from 6 different species. Its crew included researchers who 2 years ago would have never worked together. Its mission was to seek out what they did not understand and learn from it. The Deathworlders had sparked an innovation boom by teaching a simple lesson. Comfort is not the same as happiness. Safety is not the same as strength. Stability is not the same as success. The galaxy was messy now, chaotic, unpredictable, experimental, alive in ways it had not been for 300 years. And it had never been better. Rennie's communicator buzzed with the day's final message, a proposal from Earth to establish a joint research facility focused on extreme environment engineering. The project would require accepting significant risks with uncertain outcomes. She approved it without hesitation and smiled at the thought of what her younger self would have done. The boom was only beginning.